Hello, and welcome to 2020 OSEP Remarks. Before we get started, there are a couple of housekeeping items that will guide you on how to interact with today's presentation. Today's presentation is broadcasted live, and all attendees will be muted for the duration of this event. Make sure that your computer speakers are not muted and volume is turned up. If you would like to ask a question during the presentation, simply type your question in the Q&A widget located on your Intrado control panel. To access the closed captioning, please click the CC widget on your Intrado control panel. Should the slides stop advancing, or if you lose audio or video at any time, please refresh your browser. If you need further technical assistance, you can enter your question in the Q&A widget. At the conclusion of today's presentation, a brief evaluation survey will appear. Please make sure to complete the survey and provide us with feedback on the content of today's presentation. We will now get started.
This is definitely not the way I hope to be delivering my remarks this year. First off, I'm wearing a tie for the first time in 4 months. I think I could buy a car with the money I saved in dry cleaning since the quarantine. I normally get asked for my latest red line adventure. Well, I haven't been on Metro for 4 months. However, I do want to report that last week, a red line train derailed. No one was injured. The cause was the train ran a red light. So Metro's solution is to provide intensive training to the train operators. The training should be pretty brief. I was able to get a copy of the actual training curriculum and will share it with you. Are you ready? Here it is. Green light, go. Red light, stop. Training over. Well, while I'm sure you agree with our decision to not come together with 1,000 or so of our favorite OSEP Part D colleagues, given the current conditions, I know the entire OSEP staff is missing seeing you this week. Before I go on, I want to take the opportunity to recognize OSEP staff. It's a great group of smart and committed professionals that I am lucky to work with. I also want to announce formally that we have finally a new OSEP Deputy Director, David Cantrell. David comes to OSEP most recently from the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education, and prior to that, he was a Special Education Administrator with the Department of Defense Schools. Before I get too far into my remarks, I want to call your attention to the department's COVID Flexibilities for Grants site. You can find this on the department's website on the COVID page. I also strongly encourage you to be in contact with your project officer about any changes in your planned activities, funding, or other challenges as a result of the pandemic. Last announcement before we dig in. There have been so many great products developed over the last 4 months. I cannot name them all, but encourage you to access these COVID continuity of learning resources through the OSEP Ideas That Work website. You will find links to resources for infants, toddlers, and preschoolers hosted by ECTA, and for K-12 resources hosted by NCSI. These collections also include many collaborative efforts between centers, which we always like to see. I also want to call your attention to a series of new products from our data team called Fast Facts. These mini data dives focus on a specific topic such as students with autism, students with emotional disturbance, Part C, and other topics, both nationally and at the state level, and summarize these data facts. These are neat new tools that you may find useful. So the department is really focusing on what substantial progress means and how projects demonstrate meeting this threshold to determine the amount and whether to continue funding. Over the past several years, OSEP has been working towards reducing multiple no-cost continuations and reducing large available balance transfers from one year to the next. You have heard from me in emails and conferences noting these increased efforts on our part. I want to spend a few minutes sharing some of our thinking on determining substantial progress. We know that this is not a yes or no issue, but a decision that needs to be made by a well-informed project officer based on his or her knowledge of your grant and the information you share with him or her. There are two very important pieces of data. One, did you accomplish the annual tasks and outcomes? And two, did you spend the monies planned for during that time? These two data points, combined with the additional information you provide your project officer, are the basis for this decision. If planned activities are not accomplished, are good reasons provided? If the expected budget is not expended, are there good reasons provided? It's a hard argument for us to make that your project is making substantial progress when you have only spent a fraction of your annual funds. We have to ask, did we give you too much? Did you get additional funds you weren't expecting? The last thing we want to do is take money away from a grant. We want to support you in accomplishing your goals. We know well that sometimes things take longer than planned. We also realize that our funding timeline needs to change so we can get grants out earlier, especially our training grants. The practice of squirreling away funds for an automatic 6th year is a practice of the past. So as you write new grants and as you review your annual planning, think about how you can demonstrate substantial progress, not just to your team and your project officer, but to others who may see your annual report. Would your APR adequately demonstrate substantial progress has been made? I want to note that we are likely to be inserting some COVID-related language into your GANs this year that will help to address some of the COVID-related impact on your progress, on your projects. I'd like to spend my last minutes talking about opportunities we have at this moment and this time. Like many of you, I've had to cancel planned vacations. I have scavenged for toilet paper, and I have had to get used to working from my home office and visiting with colleagues via the computer screen. I have also had to work on looking for the good things this opportunity has brought. For me personally, it's giving me less commuting headaches and more time with my grandson, Logan, better known as Ra, the sun god. I have also been looking for positives in our work. The one the OSEP staff is most happy about is that we have clearly demonstrated our ability to continue getting high quality work done from our remote locations. I think this time also gives us some opportunities to think about special education as a field and how we, as the OSEP Part D community, can take this time to think about what opportunities are emerging and what our response will be. As a special ed community, we also talk about increasing opportunities for children with disabilities and their families. I would like to also challenge us and spend a few minutes talking about a couple of opportunities that we have before us. There's always been a gap between children with disabilities and their non-disabled peers. Unfortunately, for children with disabilities, the abrupt end to the school year and the transition to online services will disproportionately affect them. As many of you who are parents have experienced, the emergency transition to online schooling was not a smooth one, and providing the intensity of services needed for many children with disability was limited and for some it was non-existent. When we return to school in a matter of weeks, it's fair to say we will see a range of options, and especially in our larger districts, a full return to in-person learning is not likely. How do we conceptualize and prioritize a continued focus on good instruction, regardless of where or how that instruction is provided? Jones, Vaughn, and Fuchs collaborated on a recent brief focused on how schools can intervene to reduce learning gaps between students with disabilities and their non-disabled peers. In the brief, they provide an easily digestible look at practices to engage in and practices to avoid. They also focus on the need to do what we know works best, a focus on explicit data-based instruction. Can we use this opportunity to reconsider how services are provided to children with disabilities, to reconceptualize or recommit to the practices we know make a difference, to the need for data-based decision-making, and ensuring that systemic supports are in place so that teachers, providers, and leaders can spend the majority of their time on the practices and strategies most likely to make the biggest difference for children with disability that we serve. A critical role for the federal government is to provide equity for underserved children and youth, and the nation's most promising education laws have long had equal educational opportunity as a central mission. However, equity and equality is still far from accomplished in the United States. Part of the challenge of this unprecedented time we are facing must include an examination of how we can improve the system of educating our nation's children. This must include how we as special educators and members of the OSEP Part D community respond to the COVID-19 pandemic and the effects of systemic racism permeating discussions occurring in homes and communities across the country. While both of these convergences have resulted in devastating and consequential losses to our country as a whole, it has also created an enormous opportunity for us all to think about public schooling in America and how we should strive to create a better way forward for teachers, leaders, children, and families. How do we ensure that questions of equity are central to our discussion and our efforts result in advancing beyond historic rhetoric to building capacity of our stakeholders to engage in actionable steps that lead to real progress and sustained changes in our policies, practices, interactions, beliefs, and behavior that ensure equitable opportunities for all of our children? Many of our centers have developed and posted statements to their website on racial injustice, and some have begun to discuss ways to address combating systemic racism and inequities within their own work with states. We support and applaud your efforts and look forward to engaging with you to support the ongoing work necessary to create different, better, and equitable ways of thinking about how we educate our children and how we continue to create the developmental, educational, and life opportunities they deserve. Within the Research to Practice division, we are examining a number of concrete steps to help address equity in our Part D and data community. Areas we are examining include panels, looking at how we can ensure a diversity of perspectives is embedded in every review panels. HBCUs and MSIs. We're examining how we can better involve HBCUs and MSIs in our grant programs. Data. Through our Fast Facts initiative, we are presenting our public data in ways that will generate discussions of equity issues. Applicant pools. We are examining our outreach strategies to expand our grant applicant pools and our RTP job applicant pools. In closing, I want to extend a huge thank you to the immediate and high quality response from so many of our centers who were asked in very trying times to quickly help OSEP respond to the tremendous needs expressed from teachers and families to support them in transitioning to online services. I've always said I have the best job in the world, and once again, y'all demonstrated why. Our office was a model in the department for quickly developing and organizing resources to meet the needs of children and families. Thank you. But there's no rest for the weary. We need to continue to meet the needs of our stakeholders as we transition back to school, as we develop and disseminate critical information and continue to problem solve as to how we can adjust to accomplish our intended outcomes under these unprecedented conditions. One challenge is how do we make sure our newly trained teachers have the critical practice opportunities critical to ensuring their success and longevity in the classroom. Our history as a community speaks well for our ability to rise to these new challenges, and many children and families are counting on our success. So on a personal note, 12 years ago was the first time I addressed the Project Directors Conference as the RTP director. I asked then, how could I not want this job? RTP supported closed captioning. They supported Read 180. They supported Kurzweil Reader. They supported PBIS. I hope, since I've had the privilege of leading the smartest, most talented staff anywhere, that I've continued that tradition of excellence and innovation. We've nurtured the field of intensive intervention with a TA center, doctoral and master's training. We've required interdisciplinary personnel preparation to better represent the reality in school. We redefined low incidence, expanding it from a label-driven concept to one of individual student need. We have nurtured Bookshare to become the largest digital library focused on persons with disabilities in the world. We've redefined the digital files the NIMAC can accept, thus dramatically expanding its reach. We created doctoral training consortium models. We expanded video description through new technology. Poet software is making it more efficient and effective. We created multiple data centers, including the Center to Integrate IDEA data, which allows states to cross-tabulate their data across disabilities and other student groups to make better decisions. And we essentially created the 1% assessment. All of us working together as a community have driven positive outcomes for children with disabilities. I'm proud to play a part in driving these better outcomes, and y'all should be proud of yourselves. If you haven't seen the documentary Crip Camp yet on Netflix, I would encourage you to view it. It's a great reminder of how far our field has come, and you may recognize our former Assistant Secretary, Judy Human, who's the actual star of the documentary. So now we're going to move into some questions and answers. I'll be addressing some live and asking some of our new staff to help, and others we are addressing in the chat. Thanks for submitting those, and please continue to submit. Please be safe. Hopefully we'll be together next year. Thank you. Now we're going to have an opportunity to meet some of our new staff and also to answer some questions that they've received from their grantees. So I'm going to start with Sun Young An and turn it over to her.
Hi, Larry. I have heard from several personnel preparation grants that they need to change their plans for field experiences for scholars in their program. Is this allowable?
We understand that institutions of higher education have had to relook at their programs of study and how they plan to implement field experiences because of COVID-19. We'll defer to changes states have had to make to licensure and certification requirements for graduates of preparation programs. We have heard from IHEs that they are trying innovative ways to have scholars engage in field experiences, including planning and delivering distance education or remote home visits, simulations, and role playing. If changes need to be made to your program of study, please contact your project officer so they are aware of the changes and any implications this may have for your budget.
Thanks, Larry.
And now, Carlene Reed has something from one of her grantees.
Hey, Larry, nice basement.
Thank you.
Blind grants. What is a critical issue facing the deafblind school-age population and those who serve them?
So an important issue that we have started targeting is that 80% of children with deafblindness impairment need intervention in expressive communication. To that end, we're working with researchers and practitioners around the country to develop a theoretically based learning progressions approach to the development of communicative competence for children with deafblindness. Additionally, we are working with the National Center on Deafblindness to more accurately account for the number of children and families experiencing deafblindness and supporting our state TA projects with expanding their efforts to reach newly identified families. We've always said that low incidence is not a low priority, and we will do all that we can to ensure these children receive an education that meets their individual needs. And now, let's hear from Anita Vermeer.
Hi, Larry. Grantees have indicated that they have not been able to implement all planned activities because of COVID-19. What flexibilities do grantees have in modifying their scope, their work scope?
We understand the need to make changes to grants because of COVID-19. This could include needing to develop new documents or products, or thinking of new ways to bring people together virtually. Please work with your project officer so that changes in timelines and adjustments to activities can be discussed, agreed to, and documented in the official file.
Thank you.
Oh, and now let's hear from Letitia Putney. We stole her from the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. A good steal, I might add.
Hi, Larry. Thank you for that. Our SPDIG grants have a specific concern about collecting implementation fidelity data. Would there be flexibilities provided for SPDIG GEPRA data collection?
Please work with your project officer on the impact of COVID-19, on the impact it's having on your collection of fidelity data. We understand there will be potentially limited access to schools depending on the local context, and just want to encourage projects to do the best they can to collect these data while putting their health and the health of others first.
Thank you.
Letitia has another question to ask, I believe.
Larry, I think I have a question. This is Amy Bay.
Oh, okay. Welcome, Amy.
Hi. How can the IDA 618 data OSEP collects be used to leverage resources and programs that promote equity?
Well, OSEP uses our data to examine the distribution of children with disabilities across racial and ethnic groups, as well as disability categories, including the breakdown of children with disabilities across where they are educated, how they are exiting special education, and disciplinary removals. We make this information available to the public on an annual basis, such as in the annual report to Congress and in our public data postings on ED's website. We do this so that equity discussions occurring within OSEP and the department and among our projects, policymakers, and the interested members of the public, that they remain informed and focused on objective data.
Thanks, Larry. I have one more question. Will the department or OSEP be flexible when it comes to granting second no-cost extensions due to shifts in project timelines and activities?
Well, we understand the situation, and OSEP will work with grantees to address any extenuating circumstances. However, second no-cost extensions should not be assumed. There are important actions that can and should be taken by projects and OSEP to reduce instances where grantees have large carryover balances. This work must begin early in the life of a project. In particular, by the second or third year of the project, careful monitoring of expenditures and timely invoicing should be taking place to mitigate or eliminate the need for a second no-cost extension. Projects should also work with their sponsored research programs, if applicable, for additional assistance in monitoring timely invoicing, payment, and other fiscal matters. Projects should continue to work closely with their project officer to complete grant activities, meet project goals, and spend down funds in a timely manner. However, I do want to add that we recognize that with COVID-19, with quarantines, and with so many extenuating circumstances, that we will make every effort to be flexible when the large balance relates to COVID-impacted activities.
Thanks, Larry.
Larry, I do have another question. What guidance can we provide to LEAs about how they should spend their SPDIG money?
LEAs should continue to spend their SPDIG funds on the type of activities, mainly professional development, that was agreed to when they accepted those funds. If the nature of the work is changing due to the impact of COVID-19, please work with your project officer on what changes or delays in spending may be needed and how that will be tracked and documented for submission in your subsequent annual performance report.
Thank you.
I'm glad we got the opportunity to hear from some of our newer staff. I'm sure they've become familiar to you, and they've been a terrific group and have really enhanced our division. So I'm going to turn it over to Darcelyn Darling and Christy Kavalik to ask some questions that we've gotten from grantees. Darcelyn?
Okay, Larry, thank you. One question that's come in: how can we use our resources to advance the equity issue?
OSEP has developed infographics called Fast Facts. Now, these infographics are sort of like the old Dragnet, just the facts, without any judgment. The purpose of Fast Facts are to post data that generates conversation. For example, some states have percentages of kids with intellectual disabilities who are African American that are 4 times higher than other states. Fast Facts presents these data graphically and extremely effectively. We encourage our projects and our states to take a look at these to determine how they can use these to engage their stakeholders in important conversations. Christy, did you have the next one?
Hi, Larry. I do have a question. Can you talk a little bit about the paperwork burden reduction priority? There are some questions about that.
Sure. This is one of the Secretary's priorities. She feels very strongly that paperwork reduces instructional time in school, and this priority is designed to address the issue by giving states some funds to plan for waivers that would lead to reductions in paperwork.
Thank you.
Darcelyn?
Okay, another question that's come in. Will OSEP continue requiring the match for grant applicants, especially during the current times, which limits the applicant pool?
Well, the match has been one of the Secretary's priorities. We don't have information about the matching requirement for future competitions. As soon as we have that information about the requirement, we will inform our grantees. Christy?
Sure. Another question that has come in is related to how we plan to expand opportunities for historically Black colleges and universities or minority serving institutions in any upcoming competitions.
Okay. Well, we're looking at options for expanding opportunities for HBCUs and minority serving institutions to promote a more level playing field. The resource available at some HBCUs and minority institutions can't be compared to universities described as tier 1 or top tier research universities. We acknowledge this and desire to address this. We will encourage grantees to submit any ideas they have on this topic.
Thank you.
Darcelyn?
And one other question that's come in. We have lots of resources, but it seems like many teachers and providers do not know how to access these resources. What is OSEP doing?
OSEP publishes a monthly bulletin highlighting different OSEP resources in each issue. This bulletin is emailed to all the special ed state directors, the Part B, Part C, and Part D grant recipients, and the early intervention program directors. We also send these to special education advocacy groups and membership organizations and a myriad of stakeholders with the hope that each group will disseminate the information to their constituents. If you're not receiving these bulletins, please send an email to so you can get on the mailing list. If you are receiving these bulletins, please make sure you disseminate them to folks in your world.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you for your questions. I want you to know that we are receiving many more questions, and our project officers and our team leaders are doing everything they can to generate answers to your questions. Please know that we stand to support you. Our job is to support you. All of our jobs are to support infants, toddlers, and youth and their families with disabilities. Please enjoy the rest of your meetings. I appreciate your time and attendance. Have a great day, and please stay safe.